I had no cake on my birthday, the waitress's daughter said. What the billionaire did next stunned everyone. What if a single sentence from a child could shatter the walls around a man's heart? Marcus Henley sat alone in the corner booth of Rosie's diner, the kind of place where the coffee was always hot and the pie was always homemade. He'd built an empire worth billions, yet tonight he felt hollow, celebrating his 58th birthday with nothing but his own reflection in the window. The rain outside matched his mood, steady and gray. Then he heard it. A small voice cutting through the clatter of dishes and conversation. "Mama, why didn't I get a cake on my birthday like the other kids?" The question hung in the air like a prayer. Marcus turned to see a little girl with tangled brown hair sitting at the counter, swinging her legs, while her mother, a young waitress named Lena, tried to hide the tears pooling in her eyes. In that moment, something shifted. "Where are you watching from tonight?" Lena Calloway had the kind of face that showed every hardship she'd endured, yet somehow still held onto softness. At 32, she looked both younger and older than her years. Younger in the hopeful way she smiled at customers, older in the weariness that settled around her eyes by closing time. She'd been working double shifts at Rosie's for 3 years, ever since her husband walked out, leaving her with 6-year-old Maisie and a stack of medical bills from her daughter's asthma treatments. The diner wasn't much, but it was steady, and Rosie herself had a grandmother's heart that made the long hours bearable. Marcus watched as Lena wiped down the counter with practiced efficiency, her movements quick but gentle. She wore a name tag that read Lena in faded letters, and her uniform, a pale blue dress that had seen better days, was spotless despite the dinner rush that had just ended. Maisie sat on a stool, coloring on the back of old receipt paper, her small fingers gripping a stubby crayon. The resemblance between mother and daughter was striking, the same warm brown eyes, the same determined set to their jaws. "Sweetheart, we talked about this," Lena said softly, crouching down to her daughter's level. "Sometimes we can't have everything we want, but that doesn't mean we're not celebrating. Remember the special pancakes I made you for breakfast?" "But Sarah had a whole party," Maisie said, not whining, just stating a fact that confused her young mind. "With balloons and presents and a big pink cake." Lena's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed her daughter's hair. "I know, baby. And next year will be different. Mama's working real hard to make sure of it." Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. He'd attended $1,000-a-plate dinners where people complained about the wine selection. He'd thrown parties where the champagne alone cost more than this woman probably made in a month. Yet here was a child who just wanted a birthday cake, and a mother breaking her heart trying to explain why she couldn't provide one. He looked down at his own untouched slice of apple pie, Rosie's specialty, the one thing he'd remembered loving from his own childhood in this small Michigan town before his tech company took off and he left it all behind. That was 30 years ago. He'd returned tonight on impulse, driven by a restlessness he couldn't name, seeking something he couldn't quite identify in the familiar comfort of this old diner. Rosie emerged from the kitchen, her silver hair pinned back, her apron dusted with flour. She was in her 70s now but moved with the energy of someone half her age. She caught Marcus's eye and her face lit up with recognition. "Marcus Henley? Lord have mercy, is that really you?" She bustled over, her voice warm with genuine affection. "Haven't seen you in this town since you were barely older than that little one over there." Marcus stood, accepting her brief hug, but his attention kept drifting back to Lena and Maisie. The little girl had gone back to her coloring, humming quietly to herself, while Lena disappeared into the kitchen, probably to hide her tears. Something about the scene made Marcus's carefully constructed world feel suddenly, unbearably small. Marcus found himself lingering long after he'd finished his coffee. Through the window, he watched Lena help Maisie into a worn winter coat that was clearly too thin for December in Michigan. The temperature had dropped, and he could see his breath fogging the glass. Rosie came by to refill his cup, though he hadn't asked for it. "That girl's got more heart than sense," Rosie said quietly, following his gaze. "Working herself to the bone. Her husband left her with nothing but debt and a daughter to raise. Medical bills, too. The little one's got asthma, needs treatments they can barely afford." She shook her head. Lena won't take charity though. I've tried. Proud as they come. Marcus felt a familiar ache, the same one he'd felt 30 years ago when his own mother worked 3 jobs to keep him in school after his father died. He'd built his fortune on the promise that he'd never let anyone he loved struggle like that again. But he'd lost sight of something along the way. He'd become so focused on accumulating wealth that he'd forgotten what it was actually for. As Lena and Maisie prepared to leave, the little girl's backpack split open, spilling crayons and papers across the diner floor. Marcus moved without thinking, kneeling down to help gather the scattered items. Up close, he could see the careful way Maisie had drawn a birthday cake on one of her papers. 3 crooked layers with candles that looked like little flames. "That's real pretty," Marcus said gently, handing it to her. Maisie smiled shyly. "It's what I wished I had. Mama says if you draw something, it's almost like having it." Lena appeared beside them, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Maisie, don't bother the customers." She turned to Marcus, her voice apologetic. "I'm so sorry, sir." "No bother at all," Marcus said, standing. He looked at Lena properly for the first time, seeing past the uniform to the person beneath, someone fighting a battle most people never acknowledged. "Your daughter's an artist." "She's everything," Lena said simply, and the love in her voice was so pure it made Marcus's throat tight. As they headed for the door, Maisie turned back. "Mister, it's okay if you're eating birthday pie alone. Sometimes being alone is just being alone, not being lonely. Mama taught me that." The wisdom in those young eyes, the gentle acceptance in that small voice, it shattered something in Marcus. Here was a child who had every reason to be bitter about missing her birthday cake, yet she was offering comfort to a stranger. If this moment touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. After they left, Marcus sat in stunned silence. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call to his assistant. "Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning, first thing." His mind raced with plans, but he knew he had to be careful. Lena wouldn't accept help if she saw it as charity. This would require something more thoughtful, more meaningful than just throwing money at the problem. But what Marcus didn't know was that Lena was about to face an even bigger crisis, one that would test everything she'd been holding together. The next morning, Lena's world fell apart. She'd just dropped Maisie at school when her phone rang with news that made her knees buckle right there on the sidewalk. The landlord was selling the building. She had 30 days to find a new place or face eviction. In a town where affordable housing was scarce and her credit was shot from medical bills, 30 days might as well have been 30 minutes. She made it through her morning shift at the diner on autopilot, serving coffee with shaking hands, her mind calculating impossible math. First month's rent, security deposit, moving costs. Even if she worked every available shift, she'd never save enough in time. And if they ended up in a shelter, she'd lose custody of Maisie. The thought alone made her physically ill. Rosie noticed, of course. She pulled Lena aside during the lunch lull. "Honey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Lena broke down then, the words tumbling out between sobs. Rosie held her like a mother would, letting her cry it out, offering tissues and quiet comfort. "We'll figure something out," Rosie promised, though even she sounded uncertain. What neither of them knew was that Marcus had spent the morning making calls of his own. He'd learned something troubling. The landlord selling Lena's building was doing so to a developer who planned to convert the whole block into luxury condos, part of a gentrification wave pushing working families out of their own neighborhoods. It was the kind of cold business decision Marcus himself might have made a decade ago without a second thought. But he'd also learned something else. Lena had been offered a manager position at a restaurant across town, better pay, benefits, everything she needed. She'd turned it down because the hours would mean less time with Maisie, and the commute would eat up any extra money she'd make. She'd chosen her daughter over advancement, over security, over her own well-being. Marcus understood that choice in a way he wished he didn't. His own mother had done the same, sacrificing everything for him. She'd died before he made his first million, before he could pay her back for any of it. That afternoon, Marcus walked into Rosie's diner and sat at the counter. When Lena came to take his order, he could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her movements mechanical. "Just coffee, please," he said gently. She poured it without meeting his eyes. "Rough day?" he asked. Lena laughed, but it came out broken. "You could say that." Then, surprising herself, she started talking. Maybe it was because he was a stranger, or maybe it was because she was too tired to keep it all inside anymore. She told him about the eviction notice, about Maisie's asthma medication running low, about feeling like she was drowning and there was no shore in sight. Marcus listened without interrupting, without offering empty platitudes. When she finished, he said something that surprised them both. "I lost my mother when I was 25. She worked herself to death trying to give me a better life. I became successful beyond my wildest dreams, but I was too late to share any of it with her." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "The greatest regret of my life is that I never got to take care of her the way she took care of me." Lena looked at him with sudden understanding, seeing past the expensive watch and tailored coat to the boy who'd lost his mother too soon. "Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments below." "Why are you telling me this?" she asked softly. Marcus smiled. "Because sometimes we get second chances in unexpected ways. And I think you might be mine." What Marcus proposed wasn't charity, it was an investment. He'd noticed that Rosie's Diner, despite its loyal customer base and prime location, was struggling with outdated equipment and deferred maintenance. Rosie herself was 74 and ready to retire, but she had no family to pass the business to. Marcus offered to buy the diner, modernize it, and install Lena as the managing partner. She'd earn a real salary, health benefits for Maisie, and a percentage of the profits. In 5 years, she could buy him out completely and own it herself. "I don't understand," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. They were sitting in a booth after closing, Rosie beside her, Maisie asleep with her head on her mother's lap. "Why would you do this?" "Because 30 years ago, this diner gave a hungry kid free pie when his mother couldn't afford to feed him," Marcus said, looking at Rosie. "Because sometimes the people who need help the most are the ones working hardest to help themselves. And because," his voice caught, "because my mother never got to see me succeed. But maybe I can help make sure your daughter gets to see you thrive." Lena's tears flowed freely now, but they were different from the desperate ones she'd cried that morning. These were tears of relief, of hope, of possibility. "I can't just accept this. I need to earn it." "You will," Marcus assured her. "This is a job, Lena. A real opportunity. You'll work harder than you've ever worked before. But you'll do it with security, with healthcare for Maisie, with a future you can build on." Rosie reached across the table and squeezed Lena's hand. "Honey, I've been praying for an answer to what would happen to this place when I'm gone. I think this might be it." But there was more. Marcus had also bought Lena's apartment building, not to gentrify it, but to keep it affordable housing. He'd offered the developer a better deal for a different property and had plans to renovate Lena's building while keeping rents stable for all the current tenants. Lena and Maisie would stay in their home, and so would their neighbors. "I don't deserve this," Lena whispered. "Your daughter drew a picture of a birthday cake because she couldn't have one," Marcus said gently. "She comforted a stranger because her mother taught her kindness even in hardship. If that's not deserving, I don't know what is." The next week moved like a dream. Marcus's team worked with quiet efficiency, handling paperwork, setting up accounts, arranging renovations. Lena trained with Rosie, learning the business side of running the diner. And on Saturday morning, 1 week after that rainy night when everything changed, Marcus arranged one more surprise. The diner was closed for a private event. When Lena and Maisie arrived, they found the whole place transformed. Streamers hung from the ceiling, balloons clustered in corners, and on the counter sat the most magnificent birthday cake Maisie had ever seen. 3 layers of vanilla and chocolate, decorated with real flowers and 6 glowing candles. "Happy belated birthday, Maisie," Marcus said, his smile genuine and warm. Maisie's eyes went wide with wonder. She turned to her mother, who was crying again, and then back to Marcus. Is this real? As real as it gets, sweetheart. If you've been enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales like this one. Maisie's birthday party became something more than just a celebration for one little girl. Word had spread through the neighborhood, and Rosie had quietly invited some of Maisie's classmates, including Sarah, the girl whose party Maisie had missed. The children filled the diner with laughter and joy, their voices bright and pure. Parents who'd struggled alongside Lena stood in small groups, offering congratulations and sharing in her good fortune with genuine happiness. This was what community meant in a small town, celebrating victories together because everyone understood the struggles that came before. Marcus watched from the sidelines, feeling something he hadn't felt in decades. It wasn't pride in a business deal or satisfaction from a successful quarter. It was simpler and deeper than that. It was the warmth of being part of something that mattered. Maisie insisted he help her blow out the candles, her small hand wrapped around his as they made wishes together. Later, as the party wound down and the children were picked up by their parents, Lena found Marcus cleaning up plates. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I want to." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that exists between people who've shared something significant. Finally, Lena spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about second chances. I think maybe this was mine too." Marcus looked up, curious. "I was starting to lose hope," Lena continued, her voice soft but steady. "Not just in my situation, but in people. In the idea that kindness still existed in the world." Maisie noticed it, asked me once why I seemed so sad all the time. She smiled, wiping her eyes. "You gave me back more than a job and an apartment. You gave me back my faith that good things can still happen to good people." "You did that yourself," Marcus said. "I just opened a door. You're the one walking through it." Rosie emerged from the kitchen with a small box. "Before I forget," she said, handing it to Lena. Inside was a locket, simple silver, worn with age. "This was my mother's. She gave it to me when I opened this diner 50 years ago. I want you to have it now." Lena's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were two tiny photos, one of Rosie as a young woman, one of her mother. "Rosie, I can't." "You can, and you will," Rosie said firmly. "This diner's been in my heart my whole life. Now it's going to be in yours. That locket reminds you that we're all connected, all part of the same story. You're not just taking over a business, honey. You're carrying forward a legacy of feeding people, caring for them, giving them a place to belong." Maisie tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Mr. Marcus? Can I show you something?" She led him to the booth where she'd been sitting that first night and pulled out her drawing of the birthday cake. "I drew this before I got a real one. Mama says sometimes wishes come true, but you have to work hard and be patient." Marcus knelt down to her level. "Your mama's a very wise woman. Are you going to come back and visit us?" Maisie asked, her brown eyes hopeful. "I think I will," Marcus said, and he meant it. For the first time in 30 years, this small town felt like home again. As the sun set over Rosie's diner, soon to be Lena's diner, Marcus stood outside, looking through the window at Lena and Maisie cleaning up together, laughing over some private joke. He'd come here lonely and lost, seeking something he couldn't name. He'd found it in the wisdom of a 6-year-old girl and the resilience of a mother who'd never given up. Some endings aren't really endings at all. They're new beginnings, better chapters in stories still being written. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, we get to be part of someone else's happy beginning, which turns out to be exactly what we needed for our own. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and may you find your own unexpected blessings in the kindness of strangers who become friends.